So I wasn't going to do this, but I felt like it. She-Ra's getting a reboot on Netflix, and that's great. People seem to really like the reboot of Voltron. But, of course, there had to be controversy surrounding it. Now, if you're like me, you weren't a fan of the original She-Ra because even though she was nice and all, her character was rather bland. So when I saw the photos that were released for the show, I thought, oh, this is cute. I'm curious. Why are people complaining? And then the second thought came to mind. It's mostly men complaining that they can't jerk off to this, isn't it? And lo and behold, I was right reading the Vox article and then going on to Twitter. Since I'm not originally a fan of the show, I can look at this without rose-tinted goggles on. Now I could go into a whole diatribe about how the guys complaining about this are gigantic man-children, and they are, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to make this one major point alone and leave it at that. The original She-Ra cartoon, just like this reboot, was not meant for you. And with that being said, I'm sure I'll get some kind of meninist incel or 30-year-old something fanboy screaming at me along the lines of, "Not meant for me! She's anti-men! Feminazi!" And no, I'm not. While I am a feminist, I'm not anti-men. I'm being extremely literal when I say this, that She-Ra was not made for guys. The show was created solely because Mattel wanted to sell more toys, so they created She-Ra to attract a female audience. This was initially not meant for guys. Now, is it a good thing that it attracted more than its intended audience? Of course. I mean, just look at My Little Pony. The show and toys were made with a younger female audience in mind. But the show did attract a large male audience, and that's perfectly fine. But let's not forget that both of these entities were to attract a young female audience, just like this reboot is clearly to attract a young female audience. So if you're a guy who doesn't like the redesign because it's not like your childhood, well, I'm sorry, but this show was not made with you in mind, just like the original was not made with you in mind. As the show stands now, I'm curious, but if I was like 10 and I saw this would be a character I'd like to aspire to be. I mean, just look at her. She's oozing confidence, a thing I sorely lacked at 10. And with a few other pictures we see, I can get a much better feel of her character. She argues with her friends, she seems to have issue following certain instructions, she's an avid and possibly impulsive fighter. But the original, have you looked at her transformation and proclamation of power recently?
For the honor of Grayskull! I am She-Ra!
It's boring. Yeah, I said it, it's boring. All the glitz and glitter doesn't change the fact that she's just standing there while her outfit changes. And it's an exact copy of the He-Man opening.
I am Adora, He-Man's twin sister and defender of the Crystal Castle.
I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull.
Fabulous secrets were revealed to me the day I held aloft my sword and said,
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
For the honor of Grayskull!
By the power of Grayskull!
We and my friends of the Great Rebellion strive to free Etheria from the evil forces of Horda!
Together we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
Riveting. This couldn't possibly need an update. And a quick side note, if you're the type of person that gets mad about a reimagining of any property and saying anything along the lines of, "It ruined my childhood," you're a pussy. No way around it, man or woman. If you say something like this, you're a pussy. If it's an actual bad adaptation, then call it out as such. But saying it ruined your childhood, especially when you haven't seen the show or movie yet, hell, the trailer for this show isn't even out yet, it makes you a pussy and it makes you look like a punk. Because even though this version can't actually go back in time to quote unquote ruin your childhood, its mere existence somehow does that. I can't stand this monstrosity. It's a terrible adaptation and it's a real insult to the fan base. But did it ruin Gem and the Holograms for me? Hell no, it just makes me appreciate the 1980s cartoon and the IDW comics more because this movie is so bad. This is part of the opening. This is the animation they reuse over and over again when she transforms, and they didn't go balls to the walls to make it look as cool as possible. I mean, I'm not a fan of the original Thundercats, but I will admit their opening is still amazing, and it certainly looks better than the 2011 opening, if you can call it that, and I like that show. I guess. At least with the She-Ra reboot, her transformation has a chance to look as cool as humanly possible, or at least look very pretty. And like I said, with the few images we get in the new show, we can already get a good feel of her character. But the 80s cartoon? Yeah, just pull up a few random images and there's not a ton of facial expressions going on here. Hell, she looks bored every time she transforms. Just look at the official photo they used for the show. Oh yeah, she sure is standing there, looking like a model, smiling for the camera. Oh yeah, this confidence-filled young lady is totally a downgrade from this. So if you looked on Twitter, you saw tweets like this, and you might notice a pattern here. The complaints come down to she's not sexy anymore and or she looks like a boy. Okay, a heroine's appeal should not solely revolve around sex appeal unless that's the whole point. No one's looking at Katniss or Ripley and thinking, by God, these women are sexy, and that alone. Charlize Theron's character in Atomic Blonde, Lorraine, is a very sexy and sexual character, and that's part of the point. She is in espionage, but there's a reason they played up her badass fights in the trailer and not that one lesbian scene she had. I mean, it's in there too, but it wasn't like the whole trailer. If you're upset she doesn't have boobs anymore, well, sucks for you, because once again, this show was not originally made with a male audience in mind in the 80s or now. And you can see in other official photos that she does have breasts, but she's a teenager, so that shouldn't be the focus anyway. The only valid complaint that could be given, but no one is actually doing so when they're complaining about the redesign, is that her being so young gives her a chance to be extremely immature and kind of annoying. I didn't see one comment that actually made that argument. It was all solely based on her looks. One guy's complaint stood out to me the most, that Netflix is afraid of She-Ra looking like a beautiful woman. When no, they aren't, because this complaint ignores a very crucial character from the Netflix cartoon lineup, Princess Allura from Voltron. She's not massively well endowed or endowed much at all. She doesn't have a massive ass and she doesn't show a ton of skin, or really any skin. But she's a very beautiful character and her design is really cute. It looks even better than her 80s counterpart. Just like the design for the new She-Ra, it's very cute looking. And I know Allura is an alien, she's a hell of a lot older than she looks, but aesthetically, she doesn't look that much older than She-Ra. At the most, just by looking at them, you can say the characters are just anywhere between 5 to 8 years apart. So this claim is crap when this character exists. A female character's worth shouldn't come down to how sexy she is. I mean, just look at Ruby. All the women there are total badasses and beautiful, but none of them are overtly sexual. And that was the point that Monty the creator, who is a male, was trying to make. And I feel like I could keep going, but honestly, I think Rita said it best when he was talking about Thundercats Roar. So I'll just end it on him, but replace Thundercats with She-Ra and tell me it still doesn't fit.
But, of course, just because it's aimed at a certain demographic won't stop people completely out of the radius of it to actually complain about it. As far as my feelings regarding the feelings of my fellow millennials and the Gen Xers that came before me regarding Thundercats Roar, specifically the ones who are complaining and actively making shit for the ones who are actually looking forward to it, I honestly have no idea how many times I had to say, this show ain't meant for us, in order for it to get into people's heads. Personally, my take on it is pretty much the same take that I made on Teen Titans Go years ago. It's a vehicle that's going to be used in order to introduce young kids to the characters and the concepts that both these shows introduce, and with the help of either a parent, a family member, a guardian, or even themselves, will sooner or later become introduced to the versions of the characters that started it all for them. But at the end of the day, the choice of which version they actually prefer is up to them.
My heart is full of hatred and loathing for your ugly faces.